Welcome to the RAOB program Configuration Options Data Processing tab. We can access this tab through the Options menu, then Program Options, and then the Data Processing tab. Before starting, please note that the options presented on this tab only apply to a very few data types. These options help RAOB address special processing needs, which primarily include missing station elevation and missing surface temperature and wind data. For without proper elevation data, RAOB cannot ensure that the soundings will be properly hydrostatically balanced. And without surface and temperature wind, RAOB will not be able to calculate some of the most critical thermodynamic indices and parameters. We'll first look at the NOAA GSD data section. GSD data sometimes has a problem where the height of the surface data does not match the station elevation value. So by activating this option, RAOB will adjust the height of the first data level to match the surface elevation. Please note that this option does not apply to ACARS data. Since ACARS soundings are aircraft-based, they rarely contain surface data. So when RAOB detects an ACARS sounding without surface data, a special prompt appears which allows the user to input all necessary surface-related data elements. If the surface elements are not entered, then the resulting RAOB analyses will be limited. The next section involves soundings produced by the Radiometrics Corporation's microwave radiometers. RAOB refers to these profiles as RDX soundings. The first option pertains to older RDX data files which did not include station elevation data. When this data is encountered, RAOB will prompt the user for the station elevation each time a new sounding file is loaded. These prompts can be eliminated by activating this option and by entering the station elevation here. However, if you suddenly begin processing RDX soundings from a different location with a different station elevation and you forget to change this elevation setting, the processed results will not be accurate. The second option also involves elevation data, but it only pertains to those soundings which contain GPS-derived elevation data. There are some cases where you may want to override this GPS elevation data, and this option provides that capability. But like the above elevation option, if you forget to alter this value before processing soundings from a different elevation, the results will not be valid. This third option is the only exception to issues involving elevation and surface data. This option is very useful for RDX sounding data that contain multiple scan modes, because when RAOB detects an RDX file with multiple scan modes, the user is prompted to make a selection before continuing. These scan mode prompts can be eliminated by activating this option and by entering the desired scan mode in the text box. However, if for some reason the RDX file being processed does not contain the scan mode entered in this option, RAOB will then select the first scan mode found. The next section pertains to soundings produced by MiSi radiosondes. Sometimes these soundings do not contain station elevation data. When this happens, the station elevation is estimated as the elevation of the first data level. However, when this option is activated, the station elevation is then obtained from this text box. The second option, if activated, will instruct RAOB to interpolate surface data if the surface level data is missing. However, this option can only be activated if the above elevation option is also activated. The last section applies to SODAR, LiDAR, and radar sounding profiler data. The first checkbox option applies to some of these soundings, which include temperature profiles. In these cases, if the surface temperature is missing, RAOB can interpolate a reasonable surface value in order to produce a more complete sounding profile. The last option applies to all of this section's data types, and because of the importance of surface wind data, this option is always active. Therefore, the only option here is to identify the percentage reduction used to calculate the surface wind. The default reduction value is 50%, but it can be any value between 0 and 100%. As an example, with the 50% reduction value, if the surface wind is missing and the first wind found is 20 knots, then the estimated surface wind will be 10 knots, and it will contain the same wind direction. And if the sounding contains vertical wind components, then the surface vertical component will always be set to 0. That completes the RAOB program's Configuration Options Data Processing tab video. Thank you for watching.